Hey, podcast family. Today's episode, more than any other episode so far on our podcast Change, is for people who really want to connect with people that you want to serve online as clients to bring transformation to their lives, but you don't know how to get their attention. Today's episode, How to Get Attention, is just for you. So right now, I went on Worldometer and it said that there are 8 billion people in our world. In addition, I looked online and it said there are 5.07 billion people on our planet today that are on the internet. So, of the 8 billion people that are alive on planet Earth today, 5.07 billion of them are online. And unfortunately for you and I, you're no longer competing to get attention with just the people in your neighborhood. Rather, you're competing with people from all around the world. So how do we get attention? How do we get attention? About 4 years ago, I remember stumbling across this book about how some guy got 1 million followers in 30 days. His name, Brendan J. Kane. I thought to myself, well, he's probably famous, Yeah, he got 1 million followers, but there must be like some trick to this. He must have a lot of money. But in actuality, what he was doing was, although he had served celebrities before and since then in different companies and helping them get their message out there, what he wanted to do was use himself as a guinea pig to show that an unknown person, not a celebrity, could actually use techniques and a system and a strategy to be able to get attention and actually in a short amount of time actually amass 1 million followers. So I want you to listen carefully today. You are talking to a genius, a master strategist. In our podcast today, you will get information that can literally transform your life. But what I want you to do is to commit today to taking action on what you learn so that you can connect with those clients you want to serve, so that your business can grow. Many of you want to leave the 9 to 5 to be able to work for yourself and make 6 scaling to 7 figures. It's possible, but you have to learn how to get people's attention. And so today, I invite you to listen to this wonderful interview between myself and the great Brendan J. Kane. Happy learning. So today, I'm so excited that we have Brendan Kane, and I'm promising you some of the questions that you've had about how in the world do I get people to pay attention to me on social media will be answered today. Ladies and gentlemen, please warmly welcome Brendan Kane.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to connect with you and everybody that's tuning into this.
So I'm really curious. I know that I've read so much about you and all that you've accomplished. I'm just curious, what inspired you to want to figure out how people get attention on social media?
Well, I think it started, where my career started, in that I started in the film industry and initially wanted to produce films, and quickly realized that, because like everybody else, I had to start at the bottom, making coffee, copies, delivery. So you're looking for that way to capture the attention of the higher level people so that you can work your way up much quicker than usually takes, because especially in the film industry, I mean, it takes years and years and years. And I just realized saying that you were a film producer does not allow you to stand out because you're one of a dozen. But at the time, and this was around 2005 when I started, that's when people started to reawaken to digital after the dot-com bust. So knowing that me saying I wanted to be a producer wasn't capturing the attention of the people that I wanted to connect with, I just kind of analyzed the situation that I was in for the movie studio I was working for. And I noticed that there would be a sense of anxiety that would come over the office every time that we finished a film, because we would spend tens of millions of dollars to produce one of these and then tens of millions of dollars to market it. And we were in a position where we needed hundreds of millions of people around the world to know about this piece of content in a matter of months. We didn't have years or decades to build that level of awareness. So that's where I started tapping into digital platforms, social media. I had gained some of that knowledge in college and some internet companies I had started, but I think it really, to the answer to your question, I was thrust into a world where you had to think big. You couldn't go into a meeting and talk about something that was going to reach 1,000 people, or 10,000 people, or even 100,000 people, because that's not the numbers that we're playing in the film industry. You need to get millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people to know about the piece of content that you've invested all this money into. And I just saw the opportunity with the emerging social media platforms and digital media as an avenue to do that for a fraction of the cost that we were spending on film or on television, radio, print, like the traditional mediums.
Okay. So something interesting that your particular scenario brings into play is you took on the task of growing your own following as not a singer, dancer or celebrity, but as someone unknown to over 1 million followers. So based upon the normal path, let's say, that the movie houses would have to do for something where you have someone that is a celebrity and you as an unknown person, what did you learn was different for the unknown person to be able to get the virality or the notoriety that you've been doing for the movie people?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think the interesting part about what social media has done is, because I've done a lot of work in entertainment with celebrities and big names and things of that nature. And does it help? Yes. Does it guarantee success? No. Like, to give you an example, I worked with a journalist named Katie Couric for 2 years and did about 240 interviews with her, ranging from Joe Biden to Chance the Rapper to Jessica Chastain, all across the board. And just because you were interviewing a celebrity or a politician did not mean that that interview was going to be successful. It was really the message, the content that was being delivered. And that's the beauty of what you see in social media, especially with, these influencers that become celebrities or sometimes bigger than traditional celebrities, is they're getting people to care about their perspective, the stories that they tell. So the biggest learning of working in this space, and also the experiment of generating 1 million followers, has really come down to your ability to make your message interesting to the general person that may not know anything about you, or may not have interest in that subject matter. So to give some more context, and we can get back to the experiment that I did, but I'm just kind of trying to give a well-rounded perspective on the answer to your question. You look at a concept like taxes. Taxes inherently doesn't seem like it's viral or interesting.
Right.
But there's a YouTube account called Clear Value Tax that's got over 1 million subscribers. And what he did so successfully is, during COVID, he started producing videos around stimulus checks. When are the stimulus checks going to be released? How much are you going to get paid? Is there going to be a second one? Those elements that a wide amount of people during COVID really cared about that information. They may not have interest or care about taxes, but because he's expressing his expertise in a unique way that's relevant to the widest possible audience, he grew his audience quick. Versus when he's talking about videos that are very niche, like the Fed interest rate, like what is that going to mean to elements of business or things like that, that's very specific, that content doesn't do well. So really the goal as a content creator or an expert to grow a massive audience is, how can you contextualize your message to make the widest possible audience actually stop and say, that is interesting, even if they don't know you, even if they don't have interest in what that specific subject matter that you cover.
So that, I want to focus on that a little bit, because what I've been told so many times is you need to niche down so that people know you for something. So for example, every day on TikTok, I started, when I started my channel, I would start, I would sing a song, or I'd pray, or I'd give an encouraging word, or I'd do a trend, and I try different things. But the thing that people responded to the most was when I would give an encouraging, like a motivational thought, or when I would pray. And so I kept doing those things over and over again. And then now at almost 1.3 million followers, that's what people expect from me. So it's a niche. But at the beginning, I did a bunch of different things. But I was told that I should figure out a niche initially and not do a bunch of different things. So which way is best? Because I heard you say if you contextualize your specific information, but make it appeal to a larger group of people, then you'll go viral or be successful. But is there a process where at first we experiment and then we find our true message?
Yeah, so there's two things to what you said is one, yes, there has to be an experimental process to find what works. But finding what works doesn't mean that you have to jump all over the board in terms of the subject matter that you're covering. Is
Okay.
you can take the same, like you could take prayer, for example, and there's 100 different ways that you can do prayer. Singing, there's 100 different ways that you can sing. So it doesn't mean that, if you want to be a singer or if you want to create content that's motivational around prayer, that doesn't mean that you have to start experimenting with pet content or, something else that has no relevance to what you want to do. So that's one level. There is some experimentation, but typically that experimentation is what is the best context to disseminate the information that you want to get out into the world.
Okay.
The second thing in terms about niching down works. It's just the problem with niching down is most people think that niching down, and again, this concept was designed pre-social media,
Okay.
but most people think that niching down means I'm going to create a very niche piece of content only for that niche audience, only for the audience that cares about that subject matter. And that's where it gets into trouble. Like, for example, and I'm probably going to butcher her last name. There's an amazing woman named Erica. I think her last name is Kohlberg. She's on TikTok. I think she has like 8 million followers and several million followers on Instagram, but she's a lawyer. And she goes super viral because she does videos that break down legal aspects of what happens if your plane gets delayed or what happens if you want to get a refund on something. So she reads the fine print of these legal things that impact people's daily lives and then makes it fun, engaging, and entertaining. So that's a very specific niche of legal work, but she's making it interesting for the general audience. Same thing with the tax guy. He took taxes and contextualized it and wrapped it for the widest possible audience to make them care. There's a luxury real estate agent named Ryan Serhant who sells properties that are $10 to $200 million in New York. Now, his core customer is very narrow of who can afford that.
Right.
But what he does is his content is he makes it interesting to everybody. Let me take you on a tour of a $7 million closet. Let me take you on a tour of a $250 million ranch.
Okay.
Like anybody would be interested in that. And because not everybody, but most people are interested in it, it allows it to go viral because it plays to what the algorithms are looking for. But subtextually, it's still playing to his expertise. So people that can afford to buy those properties see his content. Same with the lawyer. If somebody wants to engage in a lawyer, people, hundreds of millions of people have seen that woman's content. That tax guy, millions of people have seen his content. So he's still reaching his core customer just in a different way. Does that make sense?
It does. So let me reframe it so that I make sure that I got it right. So what I'm thinking is, so traditionally wealth, relationships, and health are the big three that people are interested in on social media, right? Is that correct?
Well, I would say anything can be made to go viral on social media.
Okay. But okay, let me say it a different way. So when I was studying about how to be successful in acquiring clients on social media, I was told that if your subject matter is in one of those three areas, it's more likely to gain traction. And so
I don't know that I agree with that.
Okay, well then
Because
give me
it's
the counter. Yeah.
well, first off, understanding that there's now 4 billion people on social media. So you got 4 billion content creators on the planet. And in each one of those categories, there's probably millions of content creators. So just to say you're going to, choose one of those it doesn't mean you're going to be successful. And I don't know that it necessarily increases your odds. It may decrease your odds because there's more competition. Yes, there's more people that may be interested in that subject matter, but it's your ability to contextualize that. So I always say to people, like, when you're choosing a category, choose one that you're super passionate about, because the biggest downfall for content creators is creator fatigue and creator burnout. You
Yeah.
know, is that they're trying to chase content because they think that, or they've been told that it works better. No, if you are super passionate about health or finance or wealth or inspirational content, awesome, go for it. But I wouldn't choose one of those if it's not one of the kind of areas that you really want to focus on. Because I can just point to so many examples of people doing different things in different categories, like the legal woman. Legal, I mean, you could say that maybe is about wealth, but it's not really. But she's killing it because she does it in a really unique. She uses a really unique storytelling mechanism, pulls it off really well.
So maybe would it be better for me to gather from what you're saying, if the content is relatable, engaging, entertaining in some way, then no matter the niche, you can contextualize it to be relatable or interesting for the masses?
At a high level, yes, but we have to be careful with the word relatable, because what does that really mean? Because like relatability is like different for each person. So what,
Okay.
because we fall into traps as content creators to say, well, I think this is relatable, but the person on the other screen may not think it's relatable. Like, because everybody has different backgrounds, live in different parts of the world, things like that. For example, is like content creator Julius Dean, the magician that's gone super viral. If you look at him, is that content really relatable? Not really. It's like him doing really interesting magic tricks to complete strangers.
Okay.
My friend Alex Stemp, who just hit 20 million followers on TikTok, he's the photographer that approaches random strangers on the street and offers them professional photo shoots. Is that really relatable? No, it's not.
Right.
But there's storytelling elements that they're using to make that unfold. I think it's like, you think about movies. Is Iron Man relatable? No, but we still go to see Iron Man, or we see Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. Is he really relatable? No, we go because of the stories, because of the way that they're telling their stories, the way that they're contextualizing it and expressing it. Now, relatability, again, it's a tricky thing because it can mean so many different things. But yeah, relatable, if it is really relatable, can work. But there's so many different ways of telling stories that doesn't have to kind of focus on that.
Okay. So if it's interesting, is that the key thing I should focus in on, making sure it's interesting?
Well, again, interesting is a tricky one as well. I think
Okay.
it's really setting a clear expectation very quickly that this content is worth consuming, that this content is going to serve some purpose. And it can be interesting, it can be entertaining, it can be emotional, it can be many different things. Interesting is definitely one of them, but I think it's, how do we set a clear expectation that this content is worth caring about, is worth stopping and watching, and then making sure that you are delivering on that expectation throughout that content and delivering with whatever the promise is. So, like, a good analogy is if you think about movie trailers.
Okay.
Movie trailers set a very clear expectation. If you go and buy a ticket to this movie, or if you buy this movie on iTunes, or if you sit down and watch this on Netflix, this is what you can expect. And obviously, when you sit down with that movie, you hope that the director, the producer, the studio delivers on that expectation and the movie's good. But if, like, for example, you watch a movie for a trailer for a comedy and you sit down and it's a horror movie, it's going to be like, what's there? Or
Right.
I'm sure you've sat down and the trailer looks good, and then you watch the movie and it's horrible, and they kind of let you down and you may turn it off. So yeah, I think that all the questions you're asking are great. It's just there's so much nuance in it, and the nuance comes in the fact that there's 4 billion other content creators on the planet that we're fighting for attention against.
Okay.
Hey, just wanted to take a little break and talk to you about the sponsor of today's podcast episode. The sponsor of today's episode is Content Creating Academy. Content Creating Academy is a place where faith-based entrepreneurs and faith-based service providers can get that help that they need to connect with the clients that they want to serve. We have group coaching. It's a wonderful system. It's a 6-month program. We also have a 12-month program. And starting Black Friday, we will also have TikTok Secrets Masterclass and TikTok Secrets Masterclass Mastermind. Stay tuned for information about that. If you're catching this before Black Friday, I don't want to let the cat out the bag. But if you'd like more information about Content Creating Academy because you're a faith-based entrepreneur or faith-based service provider, and I believe we're all faith-based service providers, those of us who have a faith and a higher power and believe we have gifts that we're supposed to give back to our Creator to give Him glory, you're a faith-based service provider. If you're a faith-based service provider and you want help connecting with the clients that you want to serve so that you can leave the 9-to-5 and you can grow your business to 6 figures and scaling to 7, I invite you to sign up for a discovery call. Visit our website, contentcreatingacademy.com, contentcreatingacademy.com, and we'll be happy to help you. But before we go back to the video, have you ever had a teacher and you're like, teacher, I really, really, really want to learn. I'm serious. I'm a good student. Please just help me to understand. I felt a little bit that way when we were doing the interview. I'm like, contextualizing. How do we make a context? I don't understand. So anyway, if you've ever felt like that way, I felt like that way too while I was trying to get the gist of what it is that it takes to make your content go viral. So as we continue in the interview, you'll see that Mr. Kane was able to make it plain so that I could understand it, and I hope that each and every one listening understands it. All right, let's get back into the interview.
So for the common man, so in my audience, there are many people who are trying to get attention for their message or their cause, the change that they want to see. So I'm sure that it's important for them to be able to set expectations and deliver on those expectations, as you've just said. What would you say would be the first steps that they need to go through in preparing to get their message out there?
Really studying and understanding what goes viral and why it goes viral. So we have a viral content engineering process that's backed by about 60 billion views, 100 million followers, and $1 billion in revenue for the projects that we've worked on. Now, the only reason that process is successful and continues to be successful is the core crux of it is research. So essentially, we have a team of analysts, and we're dissecting content creators, formats, brands every day. And what we do is, so we have a research process that's called gold, silver, bronze. So we may take a content creator that has millions of followers, and what we'll do is we'll break down their gold videos, which is their highest performers, the viral ones, the silver, which is like the median, the average, and then the bronze, which are the underperformers. And essentially what we're doing is when we view the gold, we're starting to create hypotheses on what's driving that performance. And it's not about the content, it's about the context. It's like, how are they telling stories? So we look at like pacing, tonality, number of edits, first 3 seconds, captions, title cards, all these elements that they're using to tell their story. And then we start through that process to kind of, again, create these hypotheses. Oh, we think that this is driving the performance. But what we have to do is we have to check, are those performance drivers that we identified, are they showing up in the silver or bronze? Because we have to study the underperformers as well. Most people, when they're looking at a trend or a content creator, they just look at it as a general sense and say, oh, they're just working, so we'll just look at it from a high level perspective. But no, you have to understand the underperformers to then determine if those performance drivers show up there. Because if they do, if they show up in the underperformers, then we know that's the reason, not the reason that it's going viral.
Okay.
So I say that to give context that if you are a content creator, you and you want to be the best in breed, you have to understand what drives it. For example, I went to film school, and what do you do at film school? You sit down, you watch classic films, and you break down what made it a classic film, what made it a good film. Or
Mhm.
if you take a screenwriting class, you will learn like the three act structure, the hero's journey, these elements to tell stories. And the blessing and the curse of social media is that anybody can open up their phone, click a button, and record a video.
Right.
It's a blessing because we all have the power of this tool in our hands that can reach billions of people around the world. The curse is because it's so easy, most people don't put a lot of thought into it. And they think that, oh, just because I create a piece of content, it has earned the right to go viral, to reach all of these people, which is not, which is not the case.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So you have a research process where you look at high performing, medium performing, and low performing videos. You analyze them in several different categories, and then you make a hypothesis about why the really good ones did well. But you look in the medium and the really bad ones to make sure that the elements that you're looking at in the really good ones aren't in the really bad ones, to make sure that your hypothesis sticks. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, essentially it is. I mean, I don't know that we classified it as good or bad. We
Okay.
kind of look at it as just like high performing, low performing, it's because it's interesting because the message can be there. Like the message can be super powerful and positive, but it just doesn't perform. And it's not performing because the message is bad. It's the way that the message is being delivered. So like there are content creators like, and I'm not going to say the names, but I have two friends that are world class at psychology, and one is super famous. The other is kind of famous, but not as famous. But I wouldn't say the super famous one is famous because he's smarter than the other one. It's just he's gotten really good at contextualizing his message. And you'll see this with a lot of content creators. There'll be health experts like psychologists or financial experts, but the ones that go viral are not necessarily viral because they are the best. They are viral because of the way that they deliver that message. The same thing with the analogy with movies. And I go to movies because I think most people have seen movies, and I started out there. You know, the most, the most, the biggest box office movies are like the Avengers or Avatar or Star Wars. But because they're the biggest, are they the best movies ever made? Probably not. Now, it's subjective, but there's other filmmakers like a Martin Scorsese or a Stanley Kubrick or somebody like that that may say that's a way better film director from a core, artistic perspective.
Okay.
But again, because they have contextualized their content and message in a specific way, it doesn't appeal to the larger audience. So that's why I kind of, or my team and I kind of stay away from like good or bad. We kind of look at it from high performing, low performing content.
Okay. So thank you for that explanation. I want to make sure that I'm absorbing what contextualizing is well. So let me give an example and tell me if I've got it yet. And hopefully that'll help my audience. So Mel Robbins has this wonderful technology that she talks about where she encourages people, if they want to interrupt a negative mind habit, to count backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then take an action in the positive direction to break from that negative habit or cycle that they've found themselves stuck in. So I've heard about neuroplasticity from people like Dr. Caroline Leaf and other experts, but when Mel Robbins just, I think it was at the end of a TED Talk, when she just says, hey, by the way, if you're stuck, just count backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and take one step in the direction to the positive, and you'll break out your cycle. That context is really relatable. It's easy. I can count backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then suddenly neuroplasticity isn't just for The genius is oh, I can change my behavior with this little technique. Is that a contextualization that makes it more relatable to people? Is that an example of good contextualizing?
Yes, it is. And let me kind of break it down further, because like Mel Robbins, we've broken down her content. And so with Mel Robbins, well, let's just take the example that you just said, the 5 4 3 2 1 exercise. So there's different ways that she can contextualize that message to the audience through social media. So she could just, talk into the camera and just talk about that. But one of her most successful formats is a split screen of her on one screen and like a client or somebody that she's in the audience or something. And what happens is it starts with the client or the person in the audience saying, I am struggling with X, Y, or Z. And it's typically a very relatable thing that most people have struggled with. And then based off of that, she can say, oh, well, let's do this exercise. And then she could walk them through the 5 4 3 2 1 exercise that then really allows the person viewing that content to put themselves in the shoes of that other person and experiencing it with them, versus just Mel Robbins speaking directly into the camera. Another perfect example of this is a woman named Dr. Julie Smith. She's a clinical psychologist. She's gone super viral on TikTok. And what she does, and we've broken down her gold, silver, and bronze content, and her gold content is she's using physical props to express and contextualize very complex things. So for example, like one of her most viral videos is talking about anxiety and panic, and she has like a bucket on the table, and she explains that anxiety and panic, and she starts pouring water into it, is when it starts to fill up and becomes too much. But then she starts, and I'm going to butcher the content, I'd recommend going watching the video, but then she talks about, well, things like meditation or exercise, and talks about the healthy things, and she starts drilling holes in the bucket, can release that tension so it doesn't become overwhelming. So what she's doing is she's using the context of this physical prop as an analogy for talking about a pretty heady and complex subject matter. So that's what I mean by context. Is we can talk about anxiety, stress, these elements in 100 different ways, but the context allows us to express it in specific ways, and your ability to contextualize it determines your level of success with that.
Thank you. I think I'm getting it.
Like another example is, I'm sure you know Jay Shetty.
Yes.
Jay Shetty has gone super viral, and one of his formats back in the day was, if you ever experience heartbreak, watch this. If you're super angry at your friend, or if you have an immense amount of anger, watch this. So he's playing to emotions that everybody's experienced to hook them in to connect with what the expectation is, so people can connect with it, and then he can convey his message about self-improvement or self-development, versus saying, hey, I'm going to break down the 3 principles of becoming a better human being in relationships. Like, it's like, people don't care, it's like, but if you're going through a breakup, or if you're angry and you want to learn how to deal with those emotions, because they're very difficult and powerful emotions, then you're more apt to paying attention to it.
Wow, you just turned a light on for me. That's awesome.
Yeah, and again, it's going back to movies. It's interesting. 99% of movies follow the same structure.
Okay.
They follow a 3-act structure, a hero's journey. There's some crazy movies that don't, but a majority of movies that we see on Netflix or in theaters follow the exact same 3-act structure. But within that, we've all sat down and watched a movie and be like, that is the worst movie I've ever seen. And we've all sat down and said, that's the best movie I've ever seen. They're all using the same structure, but it's the way that they develop those characters, the type of actors, the scenery, the setting, the time, is it in the future, in the past, alternate realities, all of these things. That's context to the stories that they're telling that dictate whether we enjoy it or not. And the same thing goes to social media content.
Wow.
is we could be talking about meditation. Meditation can be talked about in 1,000 different ways. It can be talked in ways where you don't even use the word meditation. So
Mm.
it's your ability to use these elements to your advantage to really stand out and be successful.
Wow. So I think this is a good pivot, because here's the question that I have. Like, I'm excited. Like, I like deep diving. And so, and by the way, if you all have never checked out any of Brendan Kane's books, he has a bestseller, 1 Million Followers, How I Built a Massive Social Audience in 30 Days, and Hook Point, How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World. I have both of them. I have enjoyed them. I walk 10 miles a day these days, as I'm working on recovering from long COVID, and they are on my iPhone. So Brendan has so much wealth and wisdom. But here's the question that this discussion brings. You went to film school. You have analyzed data, content, so that you can break this down like you could tell us your thoughts and feelings about anything. You are fluent in this. For the average person, how do they find success if they don't have this acumen, if they don't have as much attention to detail and a thirst for research and analysis? Like, I'm curious. Like, some people get, post something and they get lucky. But the people who really want to do it at the highest level, they find you and they work with you. But then how about the people who aren't at that point yet? Like, do they have to do as deep a dive of research as you do? Or are there cliff notes?
Well, first off, let me say I didn't learn anything in film school, so that didn't really give me an edge. So, and there's no textbook for this stuff. It's really all self-taught with,
Wow.
and it's not just me. It's my team as well.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to the more you put in, the more you get out. So, like anything in life, it takes time and to get good at these things. Now, the very question is the reason that our company is solely focused right now on research and insights and delivering those to people, so that we read the nuances and details of what's working, what's not working, and deliver those insights, so that they don't have to spend years mastering the art of doing this, and B, spending hours every day doing it. So that's why we've created a private community where literally every week we're delivering new insights on the latest trend or the viral content creator or format, and doing the research for them, explaining the research, delivering that, and letting them ask questions about it. So that's why we focused on it. But like anything in life, it's just like taking the first step. Is like, just start. When you start using social media and you see something that has 10 million views, go to the account, look at a video that they have that's 10 million views versus one that they have 10,000 views. Or if you're doing a similar format to them, put their video on one side of the screen and your video on the other side of the screen, and play them side by side, and try and determine the difference between what they're doing and you're not doing. So like anything in life, you just take that first step and just start using a more active mindset and approach to consuming content, and learn as much as possible from it.
Okay. Thank you. If someone wants to participate in the trend analysis, how do they get involved with that?
Yeah, they can go to goviral.hookpoint.com, and it has all the information there. We meet once a week, and we have a library of content creators and formats that we've broken down already. I would go to goviral.hookpoint.com.
Wonderful. Well, I have been so blessed with the information I've learned from you today. I have a question for you. What cause would you like my listeners to help you with?
I don't know. Like, to me, I think the cause is if you really believe in your message and you believe that has the ability to transform the world, is put in the energy and effort to get good at, sharing that message with the world. Because, if you don't get good and spend the time of sharing that, of how to share that message with the world where people care at scale, then you're never going to fully realize the potential that you have with whatever that you're doing.
Hmm. So care enough about the message, the passion that you have, to dig a little deeper and figure out how to get the message out in a better way.
Yeah. To put in the time, put
Hmm.
in the effort.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for taking the time out to talk to us and give us insight on how we can connect with our audience better. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you the question, what's a hook point?
A hook point is a way to grab and hold attention as long as possible to overcome the noise. So a hook point can come in many ways, shapes, or forms. It can come in terms of, a video, text, image, a content format, a product, a service. There's many different ways that it can manifest, but the core principle of it is, in this world where we now have 4 billion content creators, how do we hook people's attention long enough and hold it long enough to get our point across to people so that they can hopefully take the intended action that we want them to take.
Hmm. So when you were describing Jay Shetty and him asking someone a relatable question, have you ever been brokenhearted or something like that, would that be an example of a hook?
Yes, it is an example of a hook, but again, it's his ability to deliver on that expectation, because we're not talking about clickbait here.
Okay.
And Jay Shetty is not the top inspirational content creator just because he says, if you've ever experienced heartbreak, watch this. It's because he can back it up with great storytelling. He takes people through that and holds their attention long enough to get people behind it. Same thing with like a Dr. Julie Smith, who uses the physical props, the clinical psychologist. Just because she uses a physical prop on screen is not the reason that she is successful. It's her ability to tell a story around that, for her to deliver on that, her cadence, her pacing, her tonality. So all those elements come into a successful hook point of grabbing and holding attention.
Okay. So where can people connect with you online?
Yeah, as I mentioned, if they want to dive deeper into the insights, going to goviral.hookpoint.com. If they want to work directly with us, they can go to hookpoint.com and schedule a call with our team. Also, they can reach out on Instagram. I check DMs there. LinkedIn, I check DMs there as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for taking the time to visit us at this podcast called Change. I think that one of the big takeaways that I've gotten from you is that if you care enough about your message, you'll dig deeper into the elements that really grab people's attention and bring them into your story, your narrative. That way, if you get people's attention and you deliver on the expectation that's caused by your hook, then people will want to engage with you more, and you'll be able to spread your message and your cause and bring the value that you want to share. I'm hoping that as I spend more time walking and listening to your 2 books and receiving the trend analysis, that I'll be able to better connect with my audience. And I'm hopeful that my audience learned a lot from our conversation today that will help them in their quest to give value to those they wish to serve.
I hope so too. And thank you again for giving me this platform to connect with you and everybody that tuned into this.
All right. Thank you so much, Brendan. You have a great rest of your day.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Wow, wasn't that an incredible interview? So I want to challenge you right now. Do you believe that you have something of value to share with others? Do you really believe it? Because if you really believe it, then I want you to watch this video again or listen to this podcast again and take notes and take action to make sure when you're communicating on social media, you're using a hook point, you're grabbing people's attention, but that you deliver on the expectation that you set up with the hook that you use. I want you to figure out, just like when we asked Brendan Kane, is there anything my audience can do for you? He said, well, if you believe that you have a message that will transform the world, then take the time to dig deeper and transform the world with your message. So I want to challenge you. I want to encourage you. Believe in yourself. Believe in the message that you have. Believe enough to do the work, to be great, to make an impact. And I promise you that influence will be a tool that will make you happy, because you'll start to see the people that you influence change their lives. You'll start to help them with the services and the value that you bring to the table. So do us all a favor and believe enough in yourself and in your gifts to really learn the proper way to grab attention. And then once you have people's attention, give them some value that will transform or change their life. I'm David Griffiths, David the Digital Creator. I love you. God loves you more. And I look forward to having you in the next podcast. Make sure that you do your homework and you take action on what you learned today. And I look forward to having you in our next podcast episode. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.